Good news, your wonderful subscribers have donated money towards us.
Well, where's all the money?
Well, would you like to get yours now?
Yeah, I'd like to get it now.
Okay, hold on.
It must be like $1,000 here.
There used to be a little more.
Wait, what do you mean there was more?
I need to go.
Okay, so here we are in Blender and we want to start setting up our three-dimensional scene to actually create the coins and use a little bit of physics. And it's not as hard as you may think, but let me take you through the steps. So if you click on this little camera icon, you'll see that my scene's already been set up. That's the background, and these are the two tables that the coins and the money are going to fall on. So we just have to click the camera to go back to our 3D point, and if we zoom into that point, we can go Shift A, and for this particular one we're going to add a cylinder. This is going to represent the, I guess, gold coins. So we can click that and we can press S and we can scale it down slightly. We want to make the coin quite small, but not too small. If we Alt and middle click on the item and zoom in, we can actually see the item. If I grab it and press G and Z, I can confine it to the Z axis and just move it up. And I can scale it down on the Z axis as well, just by pressing S, Z, and scaling that down to make a sort of coin shape. So now I can move it around with my middle mouse button and we can see our coin. And if we come to our camera view, we've got the coin, and I think it looks a little bit big still. So let's go S and Z again, just to make it a bit smaller. Let's generally scale it down with S. And that is going to be our coin. So the idea now is actually to select the coin and first of all add some shading to this particular material. So what we do then is we go to the shading window at the top, Alt middle click, and we zoom in just so we can see it a bit better. Then we press Tab on our keyboard to go into edit mode, so we can see all the vertices, all the faces, and all the edges. So at this point we want to press 3 on our keyboard to select face mode, and you can see over there I've selected that top face. Now create a new material. We want to add our texture on top of the coin at the moment, so we go Shift and A in this particular window, Shift plus A, and we're going to add a new image texture. And all I'm going to do is go and find that image texture, which I believe, so we're just going to find there's a little dollar and we click that dollar. Now all we need to do is connect this color to the base color, and you'll see it does put a image on top of our coin. The UV mapping of this particular image is not correct, so we need to select that. We can go to the UV editing particular section. We can zoom out, we can also zoom into this view. You can see Blender has split our screen into two nicely proportional views, which you can actually edit just by moving around, which is pretty cool. So all we're going to do is select all those vertices. We're going to press S and scale that up, G to grab it, and we'll put it there. We'll scale it down a slightly smaller, G again. If we click this little rendered button at the top, you'll see it renders the thing out, and you can go through the different views. That's solid view, that's look dev, and that's our rendered view. So that's pretty cool. So we can see our coin now, but the problem is the bottom is still not selected, so we just have to click the bottom area, do the same thing, S, we scale it down, G to grab on our keyboard, S again to scale it slightly bigger, and the bottom of our coin. Now what we could do is actually extrude some of these edges out to make it look more realistic, but I'm not going to worry about that for today's demo. So let's go back to our shading mesh, and I think it might look nice if this particular coin had a little bit of a bump map applied to it so it looks more realistic. So what we're going to do is we're going to go Shift A, and we're going to add a vector, and we'll just put a normal map in there, and I'm just going to apply this color over there, and I'm going to plug the normal into the bottom. You'll see at the bottom here there's a normal channel. We're going to plug that normal in there, and you'll see that the coin actually looks a little bit more realistic, and you can play with the strength at the bottom here. Let's go back to our modeling view and go into, so we're in object mode at the moment, we're in modeling. Let's go Shift A and add a plane to our scene, and let's just expand that out. And having a look at that, we're not too worried about matching that up at the moment. I just want to show you the basic concept. At this point we probably need to add some lighting to our scene, so let's press Shift A and let's go to lights, and let's make it an area lamp, and go GZ on your keyboard to move it up. Scale it up so it's quite big. So we've scaled it up using S, and then we're going to grab it and move it along the X and the Y axis to around there. We can rotate that around slightly if we wanted to. We can also click this light and go to this lighting tab at the bottom and change that to maybe 500 watts. So it gives us a little bit of light in our scene. Okay, so what we're going to do now is press GZ and move that up slightly. So I'd like to give this coin some physics now, so it actually interacts with the world around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go GZ and move it up along the axis. This means it's roughly out of our camera. Let's just move it out of our camera view so it looks like it's falling from the sky. Alt middle mouse button allows you to zoom into an object. You just click it with the middle mouse button. You press Alt before you do that, and you can zoom in using your middle mouse button and drag it around using your middle mouse button, which is pretty cool. The physics properties tab at the bottom, and you'll see there's a rigid body. So we want to click that rigid body. We want to make sure this one's active, which means it actually does something and moves throughout your scene. And we're going to give it a weight of about 20 kilos or so. So you can also just type 20 in there. And dynamic, I would suggest you leave this one as a cylinder because it is a cylinder. This is like your collision index. It sort of wraps around your mesh, and that's used for your collisions around that coin. You need to set the friction quite high. Any surface that it hits, it'll actually slow down quicker because we don't want this coin to slide around too much. It is a coin, it's got quite a bit of weight to it. Bounciness we'll leave at 0. A coin doesn't have much bounciness, so we'll leave that. Sensitivity, I usually change it on my coin to 0.025. The sensitivity is just how sensitive it is to collisions around it. It actually creates a little bit of a buffer around your item, so it's a little bit more sensitive to being hit by other things. So I'm going to set that to 0.025. Collisions and dynamics, you can pretty much, the damping translation is the amount of velocity that is lost over time, so we're going to just set that to 0.45, and the rotation is the amount of angular rotation that is lost over time, so we also need to set that to around 0.53 for this to work. That means once the coin hits the floor, it's not going to be moving around too much and wobbling around too much, which doesn't look that realistic. Notice that it goes right through the floor. So what we want to do to fix that is drag the playhead right to the beginning. We want to click our surface because we want our surface to interact in this physical environment. So all we need to do is create another rigid body, but we're going to make this passive. That's a very important step. And for this particular one, we can just call it a mesh, which actually uses the underlying mesh to calculate the collision detection area that coin's going to come and fall through. Mesh is a little bit more accurate. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into this coin and we're going to go R to rotate it, and we can rotate it around the x-axis slightly. Then we're going to go back to our camera view and see if this works. So we press spacebar to play, and would you look at that, it actually works. There's a moving coin. So at this point we've got our coin selected, we're in object mode and we want to duplicate. Now you could actually add an array modifier. If you go here, you can duplicate it using this array modifier, but I'm not going to go into that in today's tutorial, so we'll just go Shift D to duplicate it. So press Shift D. Now notice what happens if I press spacebar. I have two coins and they both fall. Make sure you drag your timeline to the beginning again, and let's just Shift D both of these, move them around. Let's R them, rotate them around slightly so we get a slightly different feel. Shift D to duplicate, Shift D to duplicate. Let's rotate these R and Y around that axis. I don't know, $500 or so falling at us. Now if we go back to our particular camera screen and we press play, we've got a pretty good approximation of how these coins are reacting when hitting that surface. And notice there's no moving around, which is good, so the roughness and the sensitivity of the collisions is pretty correct. Now let's do something a little bit more interesting. So we've got this selected. So let's go back to the floorboard and let's create a dollar bill, which is going to be in a similar manner. So what we're going to do is go Control A, and then we're going to add a mesh plane. And I'm going to raise that particular plane up, squash it slightly. Remember, that's about 1 meter. Let's scale it along the x-axis. So we press S plus X on our keyboard, rotate it around. R, X, 90, we'll rotate it around quickly. And if we Alt middle click on it, we can zoom in nicely. If I go into edit mode by pressing tab on my keyboard, I can go Control R to actually create some loop cuts which will divide these faces. So all I need to do is hold that in, drag it with my left mouse and drop it. And let's make one more on this side, just so we can give our dollar bill a little bit more interesting effect. So if we press 1 on our keyboard and we select that vertex, we can move it around slightly just to give this a little bit of a crumpled effect. So it's a little bit three-dimensional. Now what we can do is go into press 3, the number 3 on our keyboard, and we can select all 3 of these faces and press E on our keyboard, extrude it out slightly. So I pushed E on my keyboard and just made it a little bit thicker. So at this moment we can go to shading and we can add a particular image wrapped onto that. So our first slot, remember, was material 1, which was the dollar bill. We need to name this dollar bill, like dollar coin. And the next one we're going to make, it will be a duplicate of this. So we'll just go add new material with this button, which duplicates it. And let's say dollar bill. So all we need to do now is actually open up our computer and find the dollar bill image. And there we have added a dollar bill. So I'm in my layout panel at the top and I'm going to go that G and Z. So we want to go to the rigid body and give it a active. We're going to make this a little bit more heavy. 12 kilos, and the friction we're going to make it a lot higher, and let's remember to go to the sensitivity and make the collision margin 0.0003, which just makes it a little bit less susceptible to collisions. Dampening translation again 0.4 and around 0.5. I think I like 0.5, 0.6 for the rotation. So if you duplicate this using Shift D about 150 times, the money will drop down and it'll look pretty interesting. After that, you can always use denoising if you want to render this. Make sure you use cycles or maybe a shadow catcher. That's out of the scope of this video, but it really does give you a realistic look and feel. I'm going to leave the video there and hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you got something out of this video, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to try to do some more videos on this particular topic in the future. So see you again next time.